Chapter 1. Dead on Arrival. The town ran on shift whistles and coal smoke. The sky over it never quite came clean, and the men who worked the factories came home with hands stained in away soap had stopped negotiating with years ago. South Africa, 1981. My family was ordinary the way most families insist they're ordinary. A mother, a father, an older brother already tearing through the house on the firm understanding that he would remain an only child. None of them knew I was on my way. Medically speaking, I wasn't supposed to be. My mother had a copper coil sitting inside her with exactly one job. The way a smoke detector has exactly one job. I got past it anyway, before I had a face, before I had elbows. The device came with a success rate somewhere in the high 90s. Somebody has to be the other bit. Strike one against the universe's plans. The universe had already been swinging, and swinging hard. There was a long run of miscarriages ahead of me in the queue. Enough of them that Hope in that house had learned to keep its coat on by the door, one hand already on the knob. Then the 6-month scan. A fluorescent tube buzzed overhead. Cold gel. Grainy static on the monitor. My mother lay there with her hands folded over a belly that should have been getting louder, not quieter. The doctor moved the wand. Frowned. Moved it again, the way you jiggle a remote before admitting the batteries are dead. Nothing. No heartbeat flickering on the screen. The cord had wrapped around my neck 3 times and torn under its own weight. 3 times. Once is an accident, twice is carelessness, 3 times is a man committing to a bit. Then the doctor said the sentence doctors train for years to avoid having to say twice to the same woman. There is no sign of life. So they waited. My mother went home carrying a baby a doctor had signed off as dead, and she waited for a date. I do not know how long. Nobody has ever told me, and I have never asked. She cooked. She hung washing on the line. She kept my brother, for years old and everywhere at once, away from the stove and out of the road, and answered the door when neighbors came around. She slept next to my father every night with all of it inside her. When the date came, they induced her. I arrived exactly as billed. Grayish-blue, silent, the color of a bruise that hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. My father stood close enough to watch the whole thing, and for one confused second, he genuinely thought the doctor was holding the placenta. That's the color we're talking about. Some mistaken for afterbirth. The doctor did what doctors do when a birth turns into a eulogy. He set me on a cold steel table off to the side and turned back to my mother because she was the one still confirmed alive. There's a procedure for this, and he followed it correctly. Nobody watched the table after that. You don't babysit a casualty. Then somebody heard something. Small. Vet. Furious, if a sound can be furious. And I choose to believe this one was. The doctor spun round fast enough to hurt himself, snatched me into the air, arms out, jaw somewhere near the floor, gasping like a man watching a photograph climb out of its frame and ask him for a light. 5 minutes earlier I'd been filed, stamped, and closed as a case. The only witness was a man rethinking his entire career. I'd love to tell you I did something dignified. A cry, a whimper, anything you could frame. Instead, in the one shining moment, a grown man stood in a South African hospital holding an actual miracle in his own 2 hands. Mouth open, I looked up at him and urinated into it. Into his mouth. Let him have it. Before I had a name or a birth certificate or the basic decency to wait for my mother first. I'd already delivered my opening statement. Warm, wordless, aimed with real precision at the one man who thought he'd seen the last of me. Postage due. My family still calls it the funniest thing that ever happened in that hospital. Nobody ever asks how the doctor felt about it, standing there dripping. Spike got me breathing. A coil, a long queue of almosts, and my own overachieving umbilical cord had all voted against it, and Spike carried the room. It has been running quietly under most of what I've done since, usually with the same warm enthusiasm as round 1. By every clinical measure in that room, I wasn't supposed to be there. I was there anyway. The first man to notice went home and showered. One last thing before we move on. Take note of the building. That hospital and I were only getting started. It became the longest-running relationship of my life, the kind normally reserved for a bad landlord. I will be back, not once by choice,